Texans training camp is right around the corner. We know about a lot of the starters on this Texans team, but we've got to find out about the depth, an important key aspect for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. I will spin the infamous Wheel of Depth, and we will talk about the player that pops up on the Wheel of Depth, and we will attempt to get through everybody on the depth chart before training camp starts. And when I say we will attempt, we will get through everybody on the depth chart before training camp begins. Simple. I spin the wheel. I tell you about the player as it shows up. So let's see what player we're starting with. There's some good players on here, and there's some backup players on here. And there's some players that have a rough route to the roster, like Ali Gay from LSU. He was on the team last year as an undrafted free agent, was on the practice squad for most of last year. And he's an interesting player along the defensive tackle situation from a depth standpoint. He felt like a player that needed a little bit more seasoning for a year to find out exactly what he can bring to the table. He's a big guy. You can notice him right away when you see him out on the field. They actually had him on some kickoff stuff last year, so I do wonder if he's going to be a part of the new kickoff coverage units as well. But he was a practice squad player last year. He's probably still practice squad level type player unless something has really transformed and changed for Ali Gay in the year that he has had with the Houston Texans. So not going to be easy for him in a crowded defensive tackle room with Foley Fatukasi and Tim Settle and Khalil Davis and Kurt Hinish and so on and so forth. Won't be easy to make it as a defensive tackle, but he's got an outside shot with a little bit of experience, knowledge of the system, and maybe a year of seasoning in the NFL, having him squared away. There's Ali Gay in the books. Let's spin the wheel again and see what comes up here. Went from a defensive tackle to a wide receiver. So Robert Woods is a fascinating name to talk about when it comes to the wide receiver room. Most of us, myself included, expected that the addition of Stefon Diggs would, in short order, mean the end of Robert Woods on the Houston Texans. That has not been the case. In fact, Robert Woods had a pretty darn good spring in OTAs and minicamp for the Houston Texans. Now, he's a veteran. He's been around the block. He's played a lot of football. He was an important part of helping get this offense settled, squared away, learn the offense, teach it to the other guys in the offense in the first year. That is a little bit less of a necessity with everybody in the second year of the offense pretty much, and Stefon Diggs coming in. He's a veteran. He'll pick it up. I'm not worried about him. But Robert Woods, as a healthy player on this team, as the fifth or sixth wide receiver for the Houston Texans, remember, he was third in receiver receptions last year. Okay, third in receiver receptions last year. If he's the fifth or sixth wide receiver with a little bit of special teams usefulness to this team, maybe kickoffs, punt returns, and you know for sure he's going to be on the field in sort of a wide receiver emergency, and he's going to be a special teams guy, it's not going to be the most dynamic stuff in the world if he's out there on special teams. But if a guy's dinged up for a week or two and he's got to replace them, he can stay healthy. Robert Woods is a fifth, sixth wide receiver. The ceiling is a lot lower than maybe a rookie or something of that nature, but Robert Woods is 5'6" on the depth chart at wide receiver. There is a lot of wide receivers that are the fifth, sixth wide receiver on teams across the league that aren't anywhere as good as Robert Woods. Again, super high floor for him compared to most, and maybe a lower ceiling compared to most. And that's kind of where I feel like he tops out for this team. Do I believe he's going to make the team? No, I don't. I believe there's going to be other guys who have more special teams usefulness than Robert Woods, gunners, guys that can go tackle on kickoffs, things like that. Woods' special teams usefulness right now is just returning. And that's kind of a very narrow special teams usage. But, hey, he does provide a solid veteran floor if you want to keep him out there as a potential pass catcher for this team. I don't believe he's going to make the team. The Texans don't need the money from getting rid of him, so I don't really feel like that kind of comes into the conversation on if Woods is or is not going to make the team. So don't have to worry about the money, the financial ramifications of having Robert Woods, not having Robert Woods. That's not an element of the conversation for me. But can he help on special teams if he's down the depth chart at wide receiver? I say yes. Can he help more than other guys who might be competing for him for that 4, 5, 6 spot? in the wide receiver room? I don't believe he can. That may be ultimately what spells doom for Robert Woods when it comes to making this team. The wheel spins and spins. Who will we talk about? Less than 20 players left. And Lonnie Johnson is next up. We remember Lonnie Johnson from back in the day, the former Texans second-round pick at cornerback who was super disappointing here with the Houston Texans. It never really clicked. He never really got it. He got sent off for a seventh-round conditional pick to the Chiefs. The Texans didn't even get the pick in the conditions because Lonnie Johnson did not meet it. He's done a good job of working around the NFL on special teams to hang on to teams, hang on to an opportunity, and he's back here in Houston with a chance to be a special teams ace. Remember, special teams is totally different this year. They've changed the kickoff rule. You're going to need guys like Lonnie Johnson on kickoff coverage. You might even, because of his experience, need him on kickoff returns as sort of a guy that can slow down gunners on the outside. I trust Frank Ross, the special teams coordinator, to figure this out. Johnson as a defensive back, I don't want to see him on the field as a defensive back. If Lonnie Johnson's got to play cornerback or safety for this team, you're in a little bit of trouble. I think officially he's listed as a safety, but he should just be listed as a special teams player because if he's got to play corner or safety for this team, the depth chart has been beat up quite a bit, and he is not the type of guy that you want out there on the defense. Now, on special teams, he played pretty well for the Saints. His previous stop on special teams, if he's a special teams ace, comes in here and the team feels like he can constantly contribute on kickoffs, kickoff return, punts, punt return, be my guest. Keep him on the team. Have him there as sort of one of the designated special teams aces. One of the things I do like about this Texans team compared to the Bill O'Brien era is when they tell you a guy is a special teams ace, he comes in here and actually kicks ass on special teams. Too many times, Bill O'Brien would tell you about a special teams guy who's here for his special teams usefulness, his special teams prowess, and the guy stinks to high heaven on special teams. So at least with guys like Lonnie Johnson or Del'Shawn Phillips or Mike Ford, special teams aces that are potentially going to make this team, at least I know they're good on special teams, unlike 5, 6, 7 years ago on the Texans when the guy was here for special teams and he couldn't play a lick of football, okay? Lonnie Johnson couldn't play a lick his first time around with the Texans. Maybe this time it is a little bit different. A minute for my friends at Platinum AC and Heating, the best service in town, Platinum AC and Heating. The best prices in town, Platinum AC and Heating. My guy Dwyane will take care of you. Put the number in your phone, 832-777-3683. When you need an AC guy, you need the AC guy, and that's my guy Dwyane at Platinum AC and Heating. 5-star rated by the Better Business Bureau. 5-star rated on Google. 5-star rated on Yelp. I'm telling you, the service and prices are the best in town with Platinum AC and Heating. From repairs to replacements to tune-ups to just fine-tuning your AC, flushing it out, getting it ready, all of those things Dwyane can take care of for you with the best service and best prices in town. And he'll talk a little Texans with you. He's a Texans fan just like you. Give him a call today at Platinum AC and Heating, 832-777-3683. It's the best in the business. It's Platinum AC and Heating. Spin, wheel, spin. Tell us what Texans player we are going to talk about next. This is the – wait, hold on. We got the fullbacks. Oh, man, I was ready to talk about Danico Autry, and it ended up on the fullbacks. It was like a bad spin at the fair at the rodeo. It's like, oh, get that one. It's like, oh, man, I get the small plushie. What is the big plushie? Well, the fullbacks. I'm not sure this team is going to keep a fullback. I would understand if they do because that San Francisco style from Kyle Shanahan certainly uses the fullback position a time or two and maybe a little bit more than most of your offenses out there. And the special teams usefulness of those fullback type players is certainly a consideration when you think about 2024's roster. The players I'm talking about are Andrew Beck, who was on the team last year and played fullback for the majority of the year, and Troy Hairston, who 2 years ago transformed from a defensive player to a fullback, played pretty well, and then he got hurt in training camp last year and was on injured reserve all of last year. It's really between Hairston and Andrew Beck. And I know somebody's thinking, well, Ben Skoranek played fullback. He lined up at fullback a couple of times when he was with the Rams. He did not actually play fullback, okay? He lined up at fullback a couple of times, ran some routes out of there. That's not what the Texans do with their fullback. They'll use him to block a couple of times. Unfortunately, Bobby Slowick handed the ball off to Andrew Beck a couple of times. Actually, I think one of them went for a touchdown. But I can remember one play early on in the season. It was like a hurry up. It was like third and short, maybe second and short, and they did a handoff to Beck when it felt like the defense knew it was coming. And I was like, what are we doing? I think I called that the Bobby Slowick's worst play of the season to that point. And then with Hairston, look, there's a lot of potential with him. He's cheaper than Andrew Beck. Again, money's not a huge issue with the players on the Texans. So don't let that factor too much into the conversation. But if a guy is or isn't going to make the team or he's going against it, like they don't need money. They've got cap space. Okay. They don't need to make a financial decision on any of these players. So it's Beck, the guy who's kind of that hybrid tight end, fullback, H-back, whatever, with a little bit of special teams usefulness, and then Hairston. Now, Hairston, having formerly been a defensive player, thinking about him on special teams, okay, it's like he can block. Can he catch the ball a little bit? Can he showcase his athleticism? And then can he go be a special teams demon? Can he be a guy that actually has a useful, clear-cut role on the team and then also be a special teams ace? I think about a guy like Desmond King if he ends up as the return guy. Desmond King as the returner, Desmond King as the slot corner. Troy Hairston as the fullback, Troy Hairston as the special teams demon. I mean, the potential for him to use his athleticism, to go down and make tackles, to block on kickoffs or punt returns. I think really I'm focusing when I talk about special teams, I focus more on kickoffs because they have changed the kickoff to make it a more vital and important part of the football ecosystem. And that's going to produce good field position and scores for teams this year. Like the Texans are going to score on a kickoff, and hopefully they are not going to let the opponent score on a kickoff. So that is something to think about when you think about these players. If I had to place a wager between Beck and Hairston today, I would tell you Andrew Beck, but it is a very narrow level of advantage that Beck has compared to Hairston. If Hairston comes in, showcases a lot in training camp, has some moments where he picks up the offense really well, showcases his athleticism, and turns out to be a special teams demon, put Troy Hairston on here, have him be the fullback. Again, I do believe this team will keep a fullback. So almost had a really fun one there with Danico Autry. We ended up with the fullbacks. We're going to end up with a defensive lineman here, though. Kurt Hinish, defensive tackle for this Texans team. Tough opponents for Kurt Hinish in the quest to make it as a defensive tackle. A lot of decent players in the defensive tackle situation. It's wide open. I do believe Foley Fatukasi is going to be one of the starters or one of the regular rotational players along that defensive line situation just because of the amount of money that he got in free agency coming over from the Jaguars. But those other defensive tackle spots, your guess is as good as mine. Phildarius Payne, Marcus Harris, Khalil Davis, Tim Settle, Mario Edwards, McTelvin Agum. Like there's a lot of different names that Hinish has to go out there and beat out. Now he has a little bit going for him in that he's got experience in the NFL. He's got experience in this defense. He knew going into this offseason what he needed to clean up in his game in this defense and what he needs to be ready to execute in the preseason. The extra preseason game actually ends up being a little bit of a benefit for a guy like Hinish because if he has to go out there and continue to showcase what he's capable of, he has an extra game to do it. Defensive linemen, offensive linemen, they get a little bit of a bonus having that extra preseason game that the Texans had because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game. They get that little bonus because you can't do as much from a defensive line and offensive line perspective in practice. You get a little bit, but not as much. Hinish, I would tell you, is maybe like one of those first men out, like in the NCAA tournament, last team out or first team out. I feel like Hinish is probably a first team out type of guy for where the Texans are at defensive tackle right now. I like that he's been with the team. I like that he's familiar with the team, but there could be some guys that could push Kurt Hinish out. It may not be easy for the big Heine to sit down in the depth chart for this Texans team. Spin, spin, wheel of depth, and tell us who the next player is. From a defensive lineman to a safety, Brandon Hill. Brandon Hill is the lone member of the 2023 Texans draft class that contributed nothing for the Texans. Zero, zilch, zero, nada, nothing. Okay, Hill brought nothing to the table in 2023, large part due to injuries, and then the team seemingly just didn't trust him to get him from the practice squad and put him on the field. I feel like that bodes poorly for Hill heading into this season. If Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie are healthy, then Eric Murray is your first depth player. Kalen Bullock is on this team. You've still got MJ Stewart as a guy that can help out in the secondary at safety. And then there's Lonnie Johnson. There's maybe some of these other defensive backs that you'd want to keep. Like, it becomes very difficult for the only draft pick from the 2023 draft class that didn't do anything in 2023. And I bring that point up because Nick Caserio just randomly threw that in there one time. And I don't think he threw it in there as a slight against Brandon Hill. I think he threw it in there as kind of a explanation of how good a rookie class can be and how important a rookie class can be. Now, having been in the building with the team, that's a slight advantage over some guys, and hopefully healthy. That gives him an opportunity, but Hill has a tough task ahead of him if he has designs on making the 53 and even the practice squad. It will be very difficult for Brandon Hill to stick around with the Houston Texans. Not impossible, but it'll be very difficult for Hill. Spin the wheel, and let's see who the player is we're going to discuss. Kendrick Green, as long as the wheel doesn't snake me again. Kendrick Green, interior offensive lineman. I say that because Green is a guy that I believe is going to be on this team. And the reason I believe he's going to be on this team is the Texans dealt with a tremendous amount of injuries last year. And Green was actually one of them. I mean, he came in to the organization as a potential depth piece at center and at guard. He ended up having to start at left guard, and then he was injured for the rest of the season. He's working back, should be ready to go at some point in training camp, maybe from the jump. Didn't see him working in OTAs and minicamp. But Kendrick Green, if he's ready to go, he's in competition for the starting left guard spot with Kenyon Green, with Nick Broker, with Jarrett Patterson if he doesn't win the center spot, with Juice Scruggs if he doesn't win the center spot. There's a lot of competition for that left guard spot. And if Kendrick Green does not win the left guard spot, his usefulness at center makes him an intriguing player to keep around the organization. Maybe it's as a practice squad player that they promote or bring up later if there's injuries, or maybe it's sort of like the last guy on the depth chart as a backup left guard, backup right guard, backup center. Because again, whoever loses the center competition between Jarrett Patterson and Juice Scruggs, that guy is the backup. Then Kendrick Green would be the backup at center. You start to see how he has a place regardless of his level of play, turns into a starter or is a backup player in training camp. Kendrick Green, I believe, is going to be on this team for his depth because there's not a lot of center options on this team from a depth standpoint. So Green, I would say right now on the team for depth because of his center guard versatility. I don't believe he's going to beat out Kenyon Green on the depth chart to be the left guard. And I would tell you that Kenyon Green, because he can't play center, if he doesn't win the left guard spot, that may be all she wrote for Kenyon Green. Whereas if Kendrick Green doesn't win the left guard spot, hey, you're a key depth piece. You know the offense. We're not going to get rid of you. Along the lines of what Michael Dieter was for this team last year. The team did not want to play Dieter a ton at center. Ultimately, they ended up having to play him a little bit towards the back end of the season, and he became a nice player at center, nice for the backup center, it felt like, because of all the injuries. And again, having a guy like Green, who's familiar with the team, played pretty well when he did play last year, and has position versatility, that's a big one for a team that went through a tremendous amount of injuries on the offensive line last year. That will do it for the Wheel of Depth. What do you make of these players that we have talked about? Kendrick Green on the team. Robert Woods going to sneak in there in the wide receiver conversation, let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down there, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check out our friends at Platinum AC and Heating. My guy Dwyane will take care of you. Repairs, replacements. If you had some sort of electrical malfunction because of all the power being off and flickering and all that kind of stuff, Dwyane can handle all of it. The best prices and the best service in town with Platinum AC and Heating. Give them a call today. 832-777-3683 is the number. Platinum AC and Heating will take care of you. I mentioned the storms there a second ago. I hope everybody is doing fantastic. If you don't have power and you have given me a couple of minutes to talk a little Texans football, I greatly appreciate it. I hope the power is on its way to you. I sent an email the other day, and it's kind of my hope for you guys when I send this video out. I hope this video finds you with power and without damage. And if you unfortunately don't have power and do have damage, I hope that everything gets corrected in short order. It is Houston strong. We hear it a lot. And I hope that your neighbors have been helpful to you and you've been helpful to your neighbors. And again, I hope everything gets cleared up. It's been a mess for a lot of people. I hope everything gets cleared up in short order. Appreciate you watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. And I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.